Hello and welcome to the Harrington Quality Management Software Production Part Approval Process discussion. Because of the number of people on today's call, the phones are muted, but we would like to take some questions from you. So if you can use a questions block on the webinar event, we'll take a look at those at the end. And if you'd like a copy of the presentation, be happy to send that to you as well. I was at the ASQ Quality 4.0 Summit last week in Texas, and one of the participants went by our booth and asked me what PPAP was. So I thought I should at least take one slide to put it in context for those of you not familiar with it. PPAP is how it's pronounced, is essentially a manufacturing process used to verify the ability to consistently produce a part for production. It was first created in automotive several decades ago, recently adopted by aerospace, and then a lot of other industries, wind energy, consumer products. It's surprising how common this approach is being used, which is why Harrington invested in the capability to support that business process. We're going to talk about the return on investment first, and we switch this around a little bit because for those of you not familiar with it, we want to make sure we started with, hey, it's a good idea. Then we'll talk about the issues with it, what a solution would look like, and we've got Rodney with us today, who's our subject matter expert on the software, who's going to show us the tool itself. You know, when it comes to ROI, everybody wants to get a specific number for it, which may or may not be possible. But in this particular subject, there are a lot of studies about 40% reduction in defects or MRB activity, significant cost reductions throughout the entire development to production cycle. And the subject of work transfers, which is being very much driven by the post-COVID business risk issues about bringing products back on shore out of China and back into the States or into the native countries that people are at. Again, like 80% reduction in problems with work transfers. So been around for a long time. And it's about saving the money due to mistakes when you're doing that. We got to make sure, though, that we're ready for this and how it's set up and how to save money by planning for these issues in advance is the entire design behind it. So concept design, product design, process design, they're all the 6 steps that we go through with the process. And the idea is, again, faster, higher quality production responses to save time while eliminating these mistakes. What's the problem with the process? Well, long story short, it's mostly done in spreadsheets and 3-ring binders. It's highly administrative, very clerical. There's people chasing paperwork, trying to figure out the status of it. There's no real standardized way of receiving the documentation, which is what HQMS provides you. And there's just a lack of system support for handling all the paperwork. And, you know, what we're trying to figure out here, again, back to the ROI just quickly, you know, is when issues aren't identified prior to production or suppliers are taking a hit with some of the problems they're sending to you. Sometimes unapproved parts are used during production. You know, all these things are kind of sitting around the problem about we really need a better way to make sure that we know how we're going to make the part. And there's a lot of components to it we're going to go through, but the essence of it really is, this is how we're going to make the part. This is what my risks are, and this is how I manage the risk. Now, you know, the process flow I put in here is out of the automotive, the AIAG manual, PPAP manual. And it's talking about customers and organizations and how this is going around a little bit. But whatever process flow you use, There's usually about 18 steps that have been common. The steps vary depending on the level. They call them PPAP levels, and there's 5 of them, about how much information has to be submitted and put together. But again, the idea is, design the process, make sure we work together to produce it, and we're ready to go. So the solution, again, is what we're going to show you in a minute. But the idea basically is a place to manage all the documentation, a place to approve it, a place to look at submissions, whether it's internal PPAP or PPAP from your suppliers. And then, of course, robust reporting on aging reports, information by location, by part, and graphs and of trends and stuff to do that. So HQMS is everything and the kitchen sink. I mean, when you look at the security that everybody's looking for, you'll be able to configure forms and labels and tables and workflows and emails and the reporting we mentioned and managing tasks. All we're trying to do is to make sure that we have the ability to participate in and track the entire PPAP process. Define the requirements, 18 steps. Again, is a common one. Approve the final specs, digitally sign off e-signatures on the documents to make it faster, easy to do that and set that up. So with that said, I'm going to, Rodney, make you presenter. Let's go ahead and show the folks some of the software.
I'm going to go over about four key areas in PPAP here, and I'm going to get in there through an email. So in this example, somebody assigned me a PPAP record, so HQMS sends me an email. So I click on the link, then I can log in, and then it will take me right to that particular record. So the requirements for this PPAP have already been specified. Most of the information has already been filled out. The point here is how we can update an assigned PPAP record and show some of the attached evidence. So I'm not going to go through the process of creating it and then working through the entire process. So if I click edit up at the top, then you can add information into the text fields. Authorized users can change some of these labels. They can change some of the options in the drop downs. So there's a lot of configuration that you can use in the system here. And so in this example, technically we would set the requirements, and then whether it's an internal PPAP or a supplier PPAP, somebody would work through those requirements. So I'm going to say that the requirements are complete to approve that portion here. So this one has been assigned to a supplier, and so technically we're waiting for the supplier to complete their portion. So you can obtain the information from the supplier via email and then update the PPAP yourself. If they send in files, you can attach them. And we also have an optional supplier portal with our Enterprise Plus version. In that instance, a supplier can actually log into a different website and they can update the PPAP on their own and attach their own evidence. And so in this example, if we go to this references area, these are just some samples here. PPAP has a lot of results that you enter in. So, if you have your dimensional results that can be uploaded, technically that one was uploaded by the supplier, so we can put all of our test results in there for the part, make sure it meets the specifications. Of course, you can attach a reference drawing that will, number each measurement, to match up to the results. So you can attach whatever you need. And so that's in an instance how we can, update the record. And at this point, I want to talk about some of the related information with the PPAP and how to link this to other HQMS records. And in one case, I mentioned email. We can send an email right from this record if I use this send link up at the top. It seems I'm not sure how this is going to come through in the video and my audience view thing. Maybe it might be flashing in and out. So I apologize if there's any kind of connection issues. All right, so if I click on this send link up at the top, I can specify an address, I can pick a contact, I can pick a user, I can even attach files. I can also attach files easily that have already been attached to the PPAP. But in this case, I already sent an email, and if I go to this correspondence area, then HQMS will track the email, and this email even had attachments on it, so we can view the attachments that I sent from this record. So that's always a permanent part of the PPAP. And so I guess I jumped ahead. In this case, I was going to show the references. Again, you can attach files here. Users and suppliers can both attach files. And now also, but from this references area, what I'm going to do is actually link into a document. So in this case, I could choose document control here and find existing record. And so I have this PPAP for suppliers example, just telling us our expectations for our suppliers. And so that would become a permanent part of this record with a link into there. Or from a document, I can link into a PPAP. We could maybe even launch into a training from here. Maybe because of this new part we're putting into production, there's going to be some kind of new procedure on servicing our equipment. So in this actions area, I can add a scheduled training record. And I'm not going to go through this whole part here. Technically, we would assign a trainer to it. We would assign employees to it, but that's just a sample of how we can launch into another type of activity. And that applies to pretty much everything in HQMS, where you can link activities from records to other records, whether they're actions, references, or linking into existing records. So the next area is on really focusing on our list page, where with this I can search for other PPAP records. And of course, the list pages within HQMS, they're all very similar, so you're not going to have to relearn how to search for records when you use different areas of the system. And we have this filter area up at the top here. And so, for example, I can choose this more fields option. What that did is it added some more fields that I can filter by, where if I click on this drop down, I can choose other fields to filter by. And just as a real quick example, like on our date fields, we have a lot of options on those fields here. And so on date originated, for example, I can choose this year. And then, of course, it's only going to show records for this year. You can see there's lots of other options to slice and dice the dates any way that you wish. So I simply click on Get Records, and there we go. We only had a couple this year. And then we can also change what we call the layout down at the bottom here. I'm not going to get too in-depth here, but in the PPAP system, there are a lot of columns. So we can pick and choose and modify which columns are displayed here. So at a default, maybe I want to get rid of the supplier code, and maybe I want to add the supplier name and maybe I want to add a date close, and then also location. Just as a real quick example, we can see what locations our PPAPs are coming from, and we can add our date closed option here. And then we can even rearrange the order of the columns here. And once you've got a certain set of columns, you can change the sort order, so you're sorting by different columns instead of just the number. We could sort by supplier first, and then perhaps by location. But I'm not going to go through all this clicking here to actually demonstrate that. And then we can also export this list to Excel. If I click on this little link up at the top here, so any columns that I've added to the list, those are going to show up on this export and all the data that's associated with them. So technically I had layouts here like for exporting requirements and notes, and that would export a ton of columns and give us all the information that we need to see. Great. So this kind of leads to the next area where exporting to Excel is kind of like a report. Technically, we don't name it as a report in the system. So the next area is talking about reports and charts, viewing the data once it's already in the system. And if I go back to that first PPAP record I was looking at, and we have this print button up at the top, so then I can choose PPAP details with requirement notes. And it shows, all the text details from the PPAP. In this case, we had, the supplier was actually adding their own notes to it, so that's why it says supplier versus internal. There's like 2 sets of notes with each requirement. Great, so that's an example of seeing one record on a report. If I go back to my home page, I have some saved items here. As an example, I can run a chart here, this Pareto by supplier open. So that'll group our PPAPs by the supplier name, but there's also a filter applied to that where it's only showing the open records, the current open records. And then another example here, if I go back to that homepage for a report, I have this PPAP trend report. And so there's just an example showing by month the PPAPs generated. And technically, I didn't go through all the details, but if we choose a system, and a chart or report, we can set a filter with it, just like I demonstrated on that list page. So thank you. That's my time. And back to you, John.
All right. Thanks, Rodney. So the PPAP is part of the overall Harrington Quality Management Software Enterprise Solution. If you'd like to learn more about the other software modules, please visit our website at www.hgint.com or give us a call or send us an email. Just quickly about the Harrington Group, we've been in business since 1991, over 3 decades with 45,000 customers worldwide. Using the software to drive their improved product quality, lower their costs, and get better revenue and profits. The team at Harrington is focused on developing cost-effective quality management software that evolves as your business grows, lets you do baby steps, lets you adopt and deploy as needed. But the bottom line is we're here to help your organization deliver substantial short-term operational improvements and long-term financial gain through a combination of the software and services. With that, let's see if we got any questions that came in. There's 2 of them. One is about they're intrigued about the supplier portal comment. There will be a webinar, separate webinars just on the supplier portal where we'll go through in detail how that works. Based on what Rodney represented, you're going to like that as well. You can register for that event at our website or send me an email. We'd be happy to register for you. Okay, there's only one more, but I'll shorten this a little bit. They liked the idea of doing things in the PPAP record that aren't quote unquote PPAP, like the training record example you provided, Rodney. The question's this: can you just add like any kind of miscellaneous task to the PPAP process? We're in a meeting somewhere and they said, "Hey, Cachet, you got to go do this." Can the software do that? Just miscellaneous tasks?
Sure. We actually have a module named Task Management. So that's exactly what it's designed for. Here's this activity, and I want you to do this thing, and then so the assignee would then say what they did to fix it, and they could attach any evidence also.
All right, great. All right, well, thank you again for joining us for the Harrington Quality Management Software Production Part Approval Process Overview. Have a good day.